My drash is called today, The Way God Leads. I felt that is something that perhaps we need to hear a little bit more. So I have a question for you. Have you ever felt the need to be protective of someone?
Yeah.
I know it's a silly question because I'm talking to parents, I'm talking to mothers, just like protection of someone is the way of life. That's a lot of times all mothers think about, and I think fathers as well. We get protective as parents. Perfectly normal. It's who we are. It's how God wired us. Parents can get sometimes very protective, sometimes overprotective. Whatever dangers that we perceive, whatever we see that we want to shield our children from, we kind of go into that protective mode. And I think that's actually beautiful. But perhaps sometimes we get protective of even those who are not our offspring. We look at people around us, we look at coworkers, we look at friends, sometimes even just the general public. We get into this protective mode and we try to seek their good. We try to look out for them. And so Torah, by the way, has quite a few commandments that talk about us looking out for other people, meaning being protective when it comes to their well-being, to their lives. So that's not new. And I think this is so because this is one of God's own character traits. I think Hashem is like this. I think by nature He's protective. And because we're made in His image, we simply follow the same pattern. We can't even help it. It comes natural to us to be this way. So in our weekly reading from Exodus, we now see a picture of Israelites finally leaving Egypt. So we've been reading all these passages from the Torah where the Pharaoh says, no, you can go, but then he says, no. And it's just this back and forth, back and forth. Finally, now they're leaving. And so we read this morning from the Song of the Sea. That's the song, of course, they sing at the crossing of the sea. And so finally, in this week's Torah portion, Pharaoh relents. He lets them go. And Torah makes some very interesting remarks about the route by which the Israelites travel as they left Egypt. And that's what I want to focus on. It's a seemingly mundane comment, but sometimes those details that are mentioned in passing, they cause you to think. And this week, that's what I zeroed in on. So I want to think together with you about the paths we walk with God and why we take one route or another. So if we look even a little deeper, I believe that Torah will teach us something about a walk with God from this passage this week. In Exodus chapter 13, verse 17, Torah says that God did not lead Israelites by the way of the land of the Philistines. This is the very, very beginning of Parsha. And it says it was a much shorter route, but God did not lead them that way. And then Hebrew text literally says, Ki karov u. And though it was closer, God says, no, this is not the way I'm going to lead them. Instead, God led Israelites through the wilderness, through a different path, through passing of the Sea of Reeds, a much longer route to the land of Canaan, perhaps a much more circuitous route, not as pleasant of a path perhaps, but that is what God chose them to lead through. There was a more direct path. We know it. He tells us right there in the Torah, it was a shorter way, but that is not the road that Hashem chose for the children of Israel. And of course, this little detail is really there to cause us to ask the question, why? Why would He not take them down a shorter path? I mean, wouldn't you want to go take a shorter path? When you take your GPS and punch in the destination, it usually gives you the shortest route, right? Avoiding traffic and all that kind of stuff. So you would think shorter route would be better. But that's not what Hashem does. Torah explains that the Almighty did not want them to encounter armed conflict on the way. Philistines were presumably out there just around the corner, and they would fight. They would probably attack this large caravan trying to move through their land. And so Hashem was concerned that if the people experience war along the way, they may lose faith. They may lose faith in the success of their journey, and they would want to return to Egypt. After all that, they would want to return. Verse 17 says, Pen yinachem haolam lirotam milchama. Upon seeing war, people may have regrets. If they see this war, they may just say, this is too much. I can't take this. It says, v'yashavu mitzrayma, and they will turn back to Egypt. Now, realizing this protective concern behind God's actions brings me to a little bit broader spiritual principles that we perhaps can glean from Torah passage today for our lives. I have two main points that I wanted us to focus on. First, God knows your faith stamina. Think about it. God knows what you can and cannot handle when it comes to your walk with Him. At various moments in our lives, our faith may be strong or our faith may be weak. Yes, that happens. And Torah shows us that the Lord knows exactly where we stand each time. Sometimes Hashem may choose to put our faith to the test. And in those moments, if we pass the test, if we succeed, our faith becomes even stronger. New doors will open for us if we pass those tests. And at other times, Hashem will not put us to those tests because we're simply not ready. We're not ready. In a loving way, He will protect you from the circumstances that may cause you to lose faith. Hashem does that. He loves us, and He understands our weaknesses very well. And in this moment, in these verses, the Israelites, they were not strong enough. They were too weak. They simply could not go through another encounter. They left Egypt. That was a very difficult experience for them. They left everything they knew behind, but for generations, they did not live life with Hashem. And to put trust and to go beyond, to make the same kind of step that Abraham did years before them, was too much to ask. This was not just one person. This was a huge group of people. So Hashem says, they can't handle this. I'm going to take them through a different route. And so at times we find ourselves on a similar path that is similar to theirs. God is loving, and He knows our limits. He knows our faith stamina. He sometimes takes protective measures with us and leads us in the kind of way, in the kind of path in life that encompasses where we are. It accounts for our strength or weakness. Point number 2 is that the path that you are on right now is such for a reason. How many times walking with God through life, we realize it's not easy. It's infinitely better walking with God than walking without God or denying God all along the way. Trust me, we've been there. It's better with Hashem. But still, it's just not easy. You may get frustrated with God sometimes, and you may wonder about this path that He's leading you on and question it, and you may pray and ask for things, and God's not going to give you those very things that you ask for, and you'll start questioning Him on that. We often ask ourselves, and we ask God, why do things have to be so hard? Why do I have to deal with this, Hashem, whatever that situation is that afflicts us at the moment? Sometimes we say, why do I move so slowly? Why can't things change? Why the change that we seek never comes when we actually seek that change? But somehow life just stubbornly keeps us on the path that we want to change, we wish to change. Or sometimes we're on the opposite side, and we say, why did this change come? I was happy and comfortable and everything just finally was going good, and now everything is in shambles. We want stability, and all of a sudden there's this instability comes into our lives. So we may want things the same, but circumstances suddenly shift and force change upon us. Now, the circumstances will vary throughout our life, but the struggle is actually the same. The struggle doesn't stop for us. The passage in Torah that we just read should help us realize that the path that we're on is such. It is the way it is for a reason. Hashem knows. Just like he knew with Israelites a long time ago that we read in a passage in Torah. We may not even be aware of the path through the desert. And we may feel like we're in a desert. But we may not even be aware that this is actually a safer path. This is the path that avoids the Philistines. But just like Israelites of old, we can't see what's lurking around the corner. So while we get frustrated with God why we are where we are, we don't realize the kind of trouble that Hashem is making us avoid by leading us just in this path and not the other one. We may want the shorter path. We want the shortcut. We want to get there quickly, right? We want to get it done in no time. But that's not what Hashem sometimes has for us. Sometimes he leads us on this circuitous route to get to where we're supposed to be going. So we often walk through life unable to see that path which Hashem leads us on. And it is a better path if we would have picked it just by ourselves. So we may want quicker, we may want shortcuts, but they're not safe. Please allow this thought to dwell in your mind, that we can have regret, our foundations of our faith may be shaken, but the way Hashem leads us is the path that he's chosen for us. And it is such because he is being that protective God that we know and see in our Parsha in the Bible.